Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 186 of Into the Outer Realms. I'm always very happy. It's a great compliment to a show host and also to a guest. I was a guest last night on Three Beards podcast. Some of you may have seen it. To be invited back, or for someone to say, in my case, much more importantly, as a podcast host, for someone to say, I like what you do. I enjoyed my time there. It's valuable. I like your audience. I'd like to come back. Well, Mark Fiorentino is a very busy man. Although he's in retirement from his original life in the high tech industry and doing calculations, inventions, he's going to talk about some of those things tonight as he deems fit for us. He keeps very, very busy. So the fact that he's come back now for a fourth time is wonderful. Mark was last with us last January, so almost a year ago, about 10 months. And he's going to catch us up tonight. He's on to some new things, some unsettling things as far as if you've been following the volcanic activity, if you have been following some other things, seismic kind of things. He's going to enlighten us on some things. I have a little bit of PowerPoint. So welcome to everyone who's here. Going to roll the intro. We'll go about an hour or 70 minutes tonight. And as always, it is an absolute education. Quantum physics or physics is such an important part of our present and our future. And it's wonderful to have Mark as our go-to guy for these physics things. So welcome. I hope everybody is doing well. And here is our intro. There exists a realm beyond our wildest dreams, a realm beyond reality that the gatekeepers and guardians have always told us consists of nothing but tricks of the eye, weather balloons, swamp gas, sand cranes, fairy tale myths of monsters, crackpot conspiracy theories, and desperate cries for attention.
We know this realm exists, and it's just beyond the horizon. The preset path, the well-worn walkways where the cynics want us to stay.
Instead, give this a listen. Put on your headphones, adjust your volume, close your eyes, and fasten your mental seatbelts, because the twilight-tinged turnoff from reality's alluring highway is looming just ahead.
We're about to leave the plane of the easily explained, couldn't possibly be's, and the no way I just saw what I saw's, for the spaces and places where everything is possible, and if you stay long enough, even probable. We're about to take a journey into the outer realms. All right. Well, for those of you new to the show, or as a friendly reminder, because it has been a while, Mark is the author of this brilliant book, Master of Reality, this beautiful cover. It's a wonderful book. I learned so much. It challenged me in the best ways. And Mark, even though he's talking a very high level of physics and there's some equations and whatnot in the book, it is accessible. I read all the Gary Zukoffs and the Stephen Hawkings and the Freetoft Copers and all of those people, Michael Talbots, through the years. But this is a wonderful, wonderful book available on Amazon and all the places, of course, that you can get books. Mark's bio is short and sweet, and then we're going to bring him on, and he's going to catch us up. Everyone's in the chat room is excited. Mark Fiorentino has been obsessed with Einstein's unified field theory ever since hearing about it when he was 10. How many people on this planet can say that? He is the author of the book Master of Reality, as I talked about. He worked for many years in the high-tech industry, including for IBM. I have come to consider Mark as a friend over these past 2 years since I've known him. Please welcome back to Into the Outer Realms, Mark Fiorentino. Good evening, my friend.
Hello, Joey. It's good to be back.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So 10 months has gone by, and you have been busier than ever.
Yeah, I've been working very hard in my lab and in my office. working on equations and so forth to support the theory of superrelativity, in particular, the theory of the slip wave, model 2.0 now. I've upgraded that concept to the ultimate complete concept of the slip wave, the cause of particle motion, and I believe is the same method used by extraterrestrials to travel to Earth and other planets and other star systems all over the world, all over the universe, actually. And it was important to study this to solve this problem, eh, which was actually the problem of figuring out exactly how particles moved, because
Mm.
that's a mystery in physics. And I know Einstein worked on it, and how I figured that out is when I had the idea, I says there's got to be, if you're going to make a unified field theory, then you have to know how particles move. And then when you ask people in physics about this, they gasp. Some of them shake their head. No, particles don't move. It's a whole other ball game with the quantum theory people. But it's that particular problem is is relegated to something called kinematics, which really means we know and acknowledge that things are moving, but we're not going to discuss what causes it. And we're just going to leave that out. And the theories are just based on the motions and kinematics and such. Well, when I realized that Einstein must have thought of this, I went through his unified field theory papers to look for him hopefully mentioning it. And he does. He says in the unified field theory paper based on Riemannian metrics and distance parallelism in the year 1930, which was getting very close to the end of his life. And he's many shots trying to get the unified field theory uh, achieved. He mentions in the last two sentences, nevertheless, I'm still far away from claiming the physical validity of the equations I derived. The reason for that is that I did not succeed in deriving equations of motion for particles yet. So I was right. He knew this too. He knew that that's important because the whole universe is driven by particles in motion. You get magnetism when electrons are in motion as they go through space. Light particles are always in motion. They travel across the universe at the speed of light. How do they do that? They don't have jet engines on their backs. They're self, they have self motion. There's some internal cause to their motion. This must be solved. Without it, we know nothing about the universe, really. And so I've spent the last several months working on that formula, and I have finally achieved it. I have it in a model, a simulation on my computer a program that I wrote, in which I have been able to come up with the central cause of particle motion. And unfortunately, I can't give a lot of details until the paper is out.
Right, right.
But I will tell you, it starts with electromagnetism, but then something else happens because of that electromagnetism, and these particles are caused to move. And I have the equations that describe it, along with the coveted equation in which I achieve, or I would say would be the father himself, the creator of all of this, was able to make sure that light moved at a constant rate, no matter what frequency. And that took a lot of testing and thinking before I found the equation that maintains the constancy of the speed of light. So no matter what wavelength I use, speed of light is always the same. And that's the way it needs to be in the universe. The universe wouldn't look right if all the colors of light were coming at you at different speeds.
Mm.
It all needs to get there together and to make sense and to be in focus. And so I can see the wisdom in designing the system like this. And so I have that equation, and when I put that all in and I change the frequency, the mass of the photon changes. Yes, I know a lot of people say photons don't have mass, but they do. They have a special type of mass that's different than normal inertial mass. Now, only people who know the theory, let's say in the government or whatever, who know how their reverse engineered crafts work would know what I'm hinting at right here. There's a different kind of mass, a gravity 2. There's not just gravity, or they may refer to it as gravity A and gravity B, gravity 1 and gravity 2. I don't know what their terminology is, but I know about it now, and I know how it relates to anti-gravity. So that all that work is done along with some exciting discoveries just the past few days in my lab, where I was able to confirm what my theory predicts. Unfortunately, I can't say that because as soon as I do, you'll get too much information too soon, and
Right.
then other people can make claims and such. So I have to finish my paper first before I can go deeper into that. And I know everybody wants to know that, and I want to give that, and I will give that information. All of the details, all of the mathematics will be in that paper so that we can get on. It's like a disclosure of sorts, a disclosure of the anti-gravity faster than light travel. And this is what everybody wants. This is what we've been waiting for. I believe the planet Earth must be ready, because if somebody here has figured that out, that's the sign that we must be ready. So if the U.S. Air Force or whoever it is that's listening to all these podcasts and don't want me to talk about this, there's no need to come to my house and do anything violent. Just come and talk to me. And if I can't go any further, then I'll have to stop. But I will have to keep that work silent, because it's either that or get canceled from life. And
Right. This reminds me of the guys, I don't know, a decade and a half ago that were working on the hydrogen engines for cars. I knew a guy had to well, I knew his daughter. They had to relocate in the middle of the night. He had worked for one of the major automakers. They
yeah,
relocated to Iowa, Colorado, somewhere we never heard from them again. Is
well,
this at
yes,
that level, Mark?
this is at the highest level. The unfortunately, for whatever reasons, the United States government, along with the military industrial complex, especially the aeronautics industry, has determined that this secret, anti-gravity, along with power technology, zero point energy or whatever unity gain system is out there that is above 100% efficiency, they're not going to allow any of that technology forward for any reason. I'm hoping that changes, because I could tell you, I come from high authority that wants this information out. So they should be taking that into consideration uh, uh, about what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help the world.
Right.
And we need this technology. And later in this discussion, we'll see exactly what may be wrong that we need to escape from. And we'll need to be able to have starships that could transport mass amounts of people just in case something goes wrong here on planet Earth. Uh, we need more than just whatever the government has and reverse engineered and so forth. We'll need Stargate technology. If we have that, that's even a more efficient way to get people to another planet. But we may need to do that. We know there have been extinction level events on this planet many times in the past, and it could happen at any moment. And the best way to avoid a direct punch in the face is to not be here when the swing arrives. We have to be prepared. So I now know I have a lot of information, probably more than any other physicist out there. I'm not a physicist, but I'm a hobbyist who does that work um, out there, so that I know the pitfalls, the dangers of this technology, and it is a dangerous technology if the craft isn't built right, and it
Mhm.
needs to be built for safety. And there's a lot of things and testing and so forth that needs to be done before it's worthy of traveling interstellar wise. So so far for the message for the Air Force, whoever may be listening in that area, come talk to me. If you want me to stop, I will have to stop. But until I hear that, and I haven't heard that, nobody's come to me, I haven't been bothered in any way, shape, or form. I'm going to continue to do my work just like any other scientist or researcher would do. I'm very interested and I'm having a lot of fun doing this, especially in math, which is surprising to me because I was always kind of an average guy with math. But I have a real good feel for this mathematics and putting it into the computer and then simulating it and uh, testing it and seeing what happens when conditions change. So that work is very important. I want to get it out. I intend, unless somebody says stop uh, or threatens me or my family, God forbid,
Right.
I'm going to assume that they're listening and they think it's okay. Maybe at this point, they're ready for this. I'm hoping so. I'm hoping they'll allow this to come forward because it's a game changer. When you hear the full explanation, it's going to make so much sense to you. It's just going to, and the experiment I did was so simple. It shocked me that it actually worked, and it works repeatedly no matter how many times I try, and I change the circumstances to go against it, and it still continues to give the same measurements, confirming my theoretical prediction. So that's a big chunk of news. I can't go any further on that now. I just need to keep working, work on this simulation, keep doing the experiments in the lab, making measurements. I got my notebook here with all the measurements on it and so
Cool.
forth.
Keep an eye on that.
That will, yeah, that'll go into the computer eventually.
Yeah. So I have a couple of questions, and they're contextual. They're not detail oriented.
Okay.
The first one is, so Tesla was working on this stuff 30s, 40s. Von Braun seemed to know about it, and then Ben Rich knew about it right over at Skunkworks. But really, so in the 40s, I believe it was, Tesla's protege Otis Carr, but then of course there was Townsend Brown, right? And the physics, all this money and all. And then all of a sudden, it all went away and nobody was talking about it anymore. You can address that if you want, but what I'm really curious about is your work along the same pathway that they were using, or are you taking a new approach?
Not not new. Very similar to Thomas Townsend Brown.
Okay.
That guy had it right.
Yeah.
I'm telling you now, it was because of there's a video clip that's going to, I don't know how I'm going to include. I want to put it in the paper, but the video clip I have, um, it basically says this, that he was right, and even though the Navy, they say fired him, but let him go or whatever, but he was immediately hired by what was to become Skunk Works, that
Hmm.
that Martin
Yeah.
Martin Company,
Yep. Lockheed Martin. Yeah.
yeah, um, to continue his work, and in a article in Aeronautics magazine, a very popular one, they talked about the B-1 bomber using Thomas Townsend Brown's tech
Yep.
inside the B-1 bomber,
I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
and but the person says something in that clip. It's a clue. It's a very important clue about
Oh.
the Byfield Brown effect that I confirmed uh, in a different way But that's the most important clue that he left behind for us, the Byfield-Brown effect,
Yeah.
having to do with, oh, I want to talk more about it, but as soon as I start saying it,
No, no, no.
I'm
All
giving
right.
away.
Next question.
I
Next
will
question.
say that guy
Good.
had it right,
Good.
and I'm
Okay.
sure he helped the government along the way to knowing what I now know.
That's exciting because there are some other podcasters out there with much bigger reach than I have. Some guys that are connected. They're connected to some nefarious people, and we're not going to do anything to jeopardize this podcast tonight, so I won't go into it. But they are talking about him, and they're talking about that effect and that aeronautics article. So more people are getting this information out, which is terrific. And that's my follow-up question. You mentioned a couple times higher authority. It's time to get this information out. So you can go into as much context and detail. I know you've talked about some of that on the show before. Do you feel like you're being guided, that the math is coming to you easier, that it was determined that you will be one of the messengers of this information?
That's what I've been told.
Yeah.
When it first happened, I just shrug my shoulders and say, well, that's interesting, when I was 19 years old. But then 5 more mediums that I had come in contact with over the next 45 years kept affirming what the first one said. And each one would give a little more detail until the final one, which gave me immense information, along with a channeling of information from the other side. Basically, they talk as one, because on the other side, apparently everyone is linked,
Mm.
and so it's a hive consciousness of sorts. I don't know how else to describe it, but it's a oneness, and they passed a lot of information to me that made me realize that this is what I already agreed upon doing before I was born. And it just took a whole bunch of life experience to get me to this point.
Right.
Even to the time when I started the book, it was just a hobby, something to do when I retired. It was my last good idea in this effort to make some discovery. I didn't know what. They didn't give me any details in the early days,
Right.
whether it was an invention or writing a book, or I didn't know. I tried different things over time, but I was told it's not your time yet. You're not ready. You don't have everything you need. And yes, that all came to pass. I got the things I needed, things like computer systems, the internet, um, certain technologies that back then were very good, that are now very good.
Mm.
That came important. That was very important in the experiment I did, because I used high quality components that I didn't have back in that day. And that and the internet and the ability to do research without having to drive to every library all over the country to get the books and papers I needed. It was just all been uploaded online, was very important. And so, yeah, I have become convinced that this is my primary mission. And so, knowing that, I feel comfortable and happy to be doing something. It's like being a missionary, I guess. I don't know.
Mhm.
You just know you're doing the work that the Father in heaven sent you to do. And this is a strange circumstance. I admit that. Uh, because you would have thought a physicist would have been given this mission, a full blown, doctor of physics and science and technology and so forth. But there probably is a lesson to learn here for everyone, including the physicists. But I could see the wisdom in not being coming from a quantum physicist, because their training absolutely forbids them to think the way that I think. And if
Mhm.
I had gotten that training, I would have been steered into the wrong direction, as all of them have been. They're on the quantum mechanics side, the quantum field theory side, and you cannot get to the unified field theory if you're using that methodology, that type of thinking. And Einstein knew that. He tried to talk them out of it using quantum mechanics for a full-blown theory, or a theory of everything. He says it's not possible to do it with just statistics and probability. You need to know the universe is determined somehow. Everything that happens, there are no accidents. There's, forces and actions, and it's all determinism. Um, it's just so actually simple in a way, much simpler than quantum mechanics has in mind. The only part about quantum mechanics that I like, that I think really adds to the conversation, is yes, there are multiple universes. There may be an infinite amount. Um, but that's coming from the source, who has said that many times to near-death experiencers, that in fact, he has created this universe and all the others, and continues to create universes and dimensions, and is aware of all of it, down to the atom, to every grain of sand on every planet everywhere. It's just pure knowledge. There is no trying to work things out like we have to do here in a linear way. Now I do this, now I perform this. This is what I have to do on the computer every day and in my lab. This experiment leads to this. It's it's really primitive in the way. The best way to do it is have knowledge. Just know. You know it. It comes from you in an infusion. And I believe all the great scientists and all the great artists and musicians, this is where their inspiration comes from. It comes from the creator.
Yes.
And we're the telephone system or whatever that communicates. We have a connection through our intuition and our inspiration to that creative power source that is there. And people should know for sure there is a God and a Jesus, and should not feel bad about talking about that, and should not, fall under the influence of people who try to say, "Oh, there's nothing, there's no afterlife." That's not true. That'll never be true. And so, yeah, there is what I call a higher authority involved here, and I'm happy to be on that team. I like to call it God's team.
That's awesome. That's a good team to be on.
That's
That's
yeah.
good. Yeah.
I feel good about that. I'm not an angry guy that wants to rule the world, or bring about great forces of evil or anything. No, I don't want to be on that team. We have the free will to do that. That's what makes this whole life experience interesting and, challenging, is we have free will. And I choose to go down this path. And, I'm not going to shirk away from it and my responsibility. I'm going to give it the best I got.
Yeah. Awesome. And I feel privileged to give you another outlet to do that, because it seems like, in listening to guys like Stephen Greer, listening to guys like Bob Lazar and David Grush now, getting the information out into the world and having a record is a life insurance policy.
Well,
It's
I'm
the
hoping in
info's
my
out there. Yeah.
case, I will have
Yeah.
to make a big announcement when I'm ready, once I got all my documentation together. And
Right.
it's for
Right.
the betterment of all people, all mankind. We need this technology to be built by Hitachi, IBM, Apple, uh, Ford, General Motors. Everybody could build these things. We need a lot of them. The world will be a much better place, and our knowledge level will rise, and our consciousness will rise because of this. It was just 100 years ago, you would never see an airplane in the sky, and cars were just coming about. Uh, but now cars in the streets are normal.
Yeah.
If you would have said 150 years ago, there's going to be people driving in automobiles that have no horses, and they would have thrown you in the jail or put you and set you on fire. And if you told them there's going to be airplanes in the sky, they wouldn't have believed you. Man can't fly. But now these things are normal.
Right.
It's just accepted. Well, and someday it'll be normal to see extraterrestrials walking down the street. They'll be living here alongside of us. Hopefully, totally living in peace. We'll be seeing UFO like craft all over in cities, and countryside will be everywhere because, why not have cars that fly in this way? Wouldn't it be great to be able to travel to Tahiti in 10 minutes instead
Yeah.
of 24 hours or 48 hours, whatever it takes now?
Yeah.
These things will be possible. The world will be a better place, and we'll be a wiser people, hopefully. The the alternative is not pleasant.
Right. And I know you want to talk about that, but let me just ask you this. Um, there is more and more talk that these ETs are already amongst us, but not ready to reveal. And of course, I kind of subscribe to when that Trinity test happened, that kind of said to the universe, the monkeys got guns. They got serious
Right,
guns.
right.
And that
I agree.
unfolded a lot of what has happened now. Um, do you think that this work, if humanity embraces this next level of clean technology, highly advanced technology, and puts aside the nuclear and the fossil and all of this, do you think that will open that doorway to communication to go, now we can talk to you. You're not as evolved as us, but you just made a big leap forward.
I think yes, they've been constantly monitoring us,
Yeah.
and there is some decision making process going there, whether it's at a federation level or something that they have. They must surely have that. The people that are out there are bumping into each other, and they're not taking shots at each other. Hopefully,
Right.
that they have some sort of organization, and they have agreed upon a way to handle our situation. It's a good way you put it, with the monkey with the gun. Um, we are unfortunately a very hostile and violent race, emotionally unstable for the most part, and so yeah, they don't want us coming freely to visit there with a lot of high tech. Uh, Faster than light space travel and carrying a nuclear weapon with them. Because now we could deliver one in a hurry to anywhere. You could build a missile out of this technology, this faster than light. And it would be very hard to defend against that. And I'm sure they don't want us doing that. And I think if we did, we would see a war, and the war wouldn't last long, because
Right.
there's no need for us to be pulling what we did uh, centuries ago, manifest destiny. We're going to take this planet. No, no, you're not. No, we better not even think about that. We come in peace. We share. We'll share our planet. You can come stay here. We'll go. Some of us will go there. We need to be in another location just in case something goes wrong here. But sooner or later, something will go wrong here, and it may be so bad that it will be difficult for humans to survive on the planet.
Right. Right.
So it's w-
We've teased it a couple times. There's something that you're monitoring very closely, the seismic activity, right?
yeah, because my book and my theory talk about planet creation and how it's formed, and I realized that within the Earth there is a small, rapidly rotating device. It's a neutronium sphere. It actually came from the Big Bang. And if you want to put
Yeah,
up that one picture of
that's probably the third one, right? This one.
yeah, that one.
Okay.
Yeah. See, in my theory, I predicted that how solar systems are born. This is a perfect example. Um, you've got the star, the sun. That's the biggest neutronium sphere. Maybe it's the size of the moon. Maybe it's the size of half the size of the moon. Maybe it's only the size of a basketball. Large enough to gather an immense amount of hydrogen as it goes through a cloud. And so it gathers that hydrogen and it forms a very dense atmosphere that starts a fusion process, and there's the star being born. Inside of that star, I will guarantee you there's a rapidly rotating neutronium sphere. So you can see the rest of the disk there is going around it, and you'll see some of these darker rings. Well, my theory predicts that there also are, along with almost every larger neutronium sphere, smaller ones that were captured when the Big Bang happened. And so they came out of their spinning, and then the other ones were coming around it and stay with it. They stay with it for the lifetime of that solar system until it's absorbed into a black hole or something. And so if they go through the cloud too, they gather the hydrogen gas and they form little brown dwarfs, little mini stars that eventually cool. The surface cools, it builds up a crust, and then there's a magma layer that eventually cools quite a bit if it's a smaller type of sphere. And you can see that there's rings of depletion of the gas as the planets are going around. They're sucking in, gathering the hydrogen, building the structure of the planet from just hydrogen. That's all it's needed to form all of the elements of the periodic table. They're going to be built right there on every planet as it goes through the cycle, building hydrogen, helium, carbon, silicon, gold, silver. Everything is going to be built in the core in the fusion process, and that core stays hot, just like it stayed hot here on Earth.
Mm.
Hey, it's been 4.5 billion years. Why hasn't that stuff cooled down yet? It shouldn't be at, I think it's, close to 9,392 degrees Fahrenheit down in the magma core.
Wow.
There's a fusion process there, and I've checked for sure to make sure that there was, because if there is a fusion process there, then naturally there are going to be neutrinos coming from the center of the Earth. And sure enough, I found the scientist who pointed a neutrino detector at the center of the Earth, and they picked up neutrinos coming from the center of the Earth. So there is a fusion process down there, at the very least. Some fission can also cause this, but fissionable material should have been gone by 4.5 billion years. Its half-life should have finished it off many eons ago. The fact that there's still stuff down there like uranium and so forth means that it's building, the core is building more than just iron and gold and plutonium and uranium. It's building all of those things in the fusion process, and the heavier the elements, the hotter it's going to get. And if your core is too large, the magma layer is going to be too big, and you're going to have an unstable crust. In other words, you're going to have cracks going through it. And if you go to the USGS site, you can see the plates and all the cracks going all around the planet. This planet is not stable. It's not, we think it's normal for this to happen because that's where we live and that's all we've ever known. But I'm telling you, there are other planets in this solar system that rarely have an earthquake and don't have any active volcanoes. That's kind of more like what I would like to see going on here. And the fact that recently we got so many more volcanoes coming online, I think 3 came online in the last 6 months. And then there's now Iceland's erupting violently over there. Well, it's not erupting yet, but the ground is cracking apart. It's about to have an eruption. They're on high alert. There's a high alert in Naples, Italy. That supervolcano they think is probably going to erupt. They just don't know how large of an eruption it's going to be. If it's a full-blown supervolcanic eruption, it's going to change the climate, and depending on how large it is, it will depend on how much the climate will change. Hopefully, it won't be large, or none at all. Hopefully, it calms down again. And this has happened in the past with supervolcanoes. They become very active and then they quiet down again. So we're holding so far with that luck, but that could go wrong at any time. And so I keep watching and making sure that, it's not getting too bad. Otherwise, well, there's not much that Earthlings could do, but I do believe that there's technology available from advanced species like extraterrestrials that can go in there and do some work with the core, maybe remove some of the neutronium and calm down the fusion activity. Um, but there's nothing humanity could do. We could never drill that deep to tap into that or vent the system. Our drill bit's only going to go down so far.
Right.
So that's what I've been monitoring that, and it's not really much you could do, and other than to watch it and pray. I do some praying about that. I definitely don't want things to get any worse, but it's something that, you might want to keep, everybody might want to keep an eye on it. There's also a super volcano in California that's also becoming active, and they're almost at the same latitude, only on the other side of the planet. So I think that's kind of interesting
Yeah.
as well, that there's so much volcanic activity. And if you show that first slide,
Yes,
um,
sir.
from the USGS website. No, not the other one. The
Oh,
one
okay. You
that's the
got it.
sun. Yeah,
There
there
we
you
go.
go. You could see, even though there's a little note on here, do not use this image out of context from the analysis on GVP site. They don't want you to look at that and panic.
Okay.
And I can't help but look at it and not be, I'm concerned. As you can see, that top line is a steady rise from 1800 to the year 2000. More and more active volcanoes are coming in line, even though they did this other line on the bottom to try to make everybody feel better. They massaged the data to make it look like, well, there's really not an increase in activity. Look at this line here on the bottom.
Yeah.
Well, I here's the fact. That line going up there, look at the last from the year 2000, how sharp that rise is.
Right.
There's a lot more activity. I think we should be concerned about that and watching that. Um, I have concerns, and this is not something, fortunately, the media has caught on to very much yet, unless you're in the area where it's happening. I'm sure the Naples newscasts and Iceland are, really covering their story, but it's not getting out to us here. Um, and it's maybe that's good in a way, because we don't want to have a panic. There's really you nothing really you can do other than maybe some prepping activities. But if it's really bad, it's not going to matter where you are, I suppose. But yeah, I've been watching that, just mainly because my theory drew me into investigating if there was any kind of increase, because I was worried about our neutronium core being a little bit too large for this size um, planet. And now that's sort of kind of being validated. And
Now, is that just natural, Mark? Because when they talk about climate change or global warming, whatever they call it, this and that, and it's always changing. There's the big debate about if it's man caused. This is just the natural
yeah,
cycle of the.
this is a natural. The forces that were are way too big. They're way. This is not like greenhouse gases or
Right.
anything like that. This is nothing we've done. Fracking doesn't. It may have some local effect for small earthquakes in an area,
Right.
but as for the volcanic activity, no, we're not. That's not anything that we're doing directly. This may, I don't want to get into the spiritual aspects. This may be something having to do that as a society we're
Mhm.
becoming more and more corrupt, and maybe this is going to handle that situation by causing a global reset of the population. And maybe, and I can't prove that, and I don't know that, it's just maybe a
Right.
hunch.
Yeah.
uh, but no, it's not. I don't think there's any way man could really mess with this
Right.
situation. I mean, the magma chambers are coming from way down deep, and it's not being influenced by anything we're doing here on Earth that I am aware of.
Right. It does, yeah, and that's why I wanted to kind of be explicit about that and just let people, this is, but it doesn't. But we have
That's
talked
good.
about, higher intelligences, and the Earth is in, war and shootings and yeah, yeah. It feels like we've devolved since the
Yeah,
big event in 2020. If 50 to 60 years, it feels like humanity has devolved.
right.
Um, and yeah, never mind what's happening in Washington and criminal proceedings on both sides, and it's just that everything.
Yeah,
I always take it as a bad sign when McCarthy said, "I'm not coming back after the break. I'm done." And there's some 40 politicians who are going to get out of the legislature, and when it's no longer good for them, it's too risky, it's too much of a headache. I those are the kind That's the kind of data that I track. That's my mission, to watch those patterns and parallels. So we have some time. You want to Where do you want to go from here?
well, it just mainly wanted to clarify the whole thing of what I've been working on and give you
Yeah.
guys an update of that.
Right.
And certainly it's potentially very exciting news
Yeah.
if I can get it out. And I hope and pray that it won't be interfered with. But
Right.
I'm just going to go until somebody tells me otherwise. I'm just going to keep pushing forward with all that. And I'm enjoying the
Right.
work. It's fun. It's exciting. Uh, it's it's a really highly entertaining, for.
Yeah, I bet setting up
Oh
the
yeah,
experiments and all.
when you
Yeah.
see an experiment, the dreamlike kind of thing that I felt when it worked, and I'm staring at it, I said, I can't believe that's measuring that.
Yeah.
And after all these years of trying so many times and not being able to do this, then all of a sudden you come up with this really simple idea that is on its surface, it says this should not work like this.
Mm,
It shouldn't be. It's against every main theory out there except for mine. And because my theory says if you do this, this is what you're going to see. I went out and did the experiment, and it happened. Oh, what a feeling!
yeah, that seems to me why it wasn't an R1 university guy or someone who's so entrenched with grants, or the big tech companies or the elites, um, because they're so beholden, and like you said, they won't move away from their own paradigms. I think it's so rare that an insider guy, right? Dr. John Mack from Harvard University, won the Pulitzer Prize, head of the psychology department, starts talking to people about alien abduction. His colleagues tried to destroy him,
Yeah,
and yet
yeah.
he said subvert the dominant paradigm. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. You're subverting the dominant paradigm.
Well, see, you use that word, and that word is used by the government.
Yeah,
Uh, that's what they consider people who come up with new. They're subverting the.
the
There's another
paradigm.
word they use too,
Oh, okay.
but they're implying that this is against the law and it should be wrong.
Yeah,
Inventing and discovering, how dare you?
right.
This has got to be kept top secret. Only we should know about this. And that's not, that's humanity keeping humanity down. We've got to evolve above that kind of thinking. And it's vitally important. I've been alerted to the point, to that point, that it is vitally important.
It,
And
it Yeah, it really is that time. I mean, with AI growing, and now they're talking about digital currencies and digital IDs and the idea of this digital feudalism. That's my mission. That's where I'm the missionary, bringing people information about this. And time is quickly coming where humanity has to make a decision now. I have one last question for you, and then I'm going to let you go because we've done a good job of not saying too much. So, as you're doing this work and knowing the higher intelligences and God the Father and what the mediums and the psychics have told you and guided you and the people on the other side, do you feel like the giants, the Tesla consciousness, the Einstein consciousness, maybe the Brown consciousness, do you feel that around you? Do you feel like they're participating in some way?
okay, all right, I'm going to tell you a true experience I had
Okay.
with the last psychic, Tamara Calder Richardson. Very good evidential medium, by the way, excellent medium. And now a good friend of mine. We converse often because she kind of knows my mission, my secrets. She's very well aware, as have others. And some of the strange things that happened to me from psychics, that I could see they're telling the psychic something, but they're not allowed to tell me. And
Mm,
they're just like, one lady kept going on and on. I was on a phone call and I called in. I was one of the callers. I got through and asked the question. And then she started, as she went in and was getting the message, she just started saying, "God bless you. God bless you. God bless." And she wouldn't stop. And the host was trying to get her to, and they told her something,
yeah.
and something important, but she wasn't allowed to say. But you asked about Einstein. Well, I don't usually say this, but since you asked, you brought it up, I'll tell you this incident that happened while I was with Tamara, and she was channeling. She was instructed. She said, they want to talk to you. They need to tell you all this information now. Now you're finally, ready to hear this. And Einstein comes through, my hero. My head is spinning at this point.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, before I tell you what he said, through the whole time I'm writing the book, I'm thinking in my head to Albert Einstein, surely gravity is a contraction of space. And I kept looking for any information on that topic where I find the word contraction and gravity, because I see it clearly as inertial gravity is that. And I do finally find an excerpt from a book, Amir Excel's book, entitled God's Equation, where Einstein made this important discovery, and it came from actually a Paul Ehrenfest, the Ehrenfest paradox.
Okay.
And he talks about that. Have I ever told you this part here yet?
Oh, I don't know. I can't
All right.
say.
All right. Well, I will leave the Ehrenfest paradox alone, because
Okay.
basically he finds a way that contraction of rapidly spinning objects will contract around the
Wow.
sphere, the edge. Perfect, just what you need for gravity. So she says Einstein's here to talk to you, and she pauses for a message, and she's going like this. Why is Einstein going like this? She didn't know my book wasn't even out yet. It was
For our radio listeners in 3 weeks on Earth, Mark's taking his hand from the top and one from the bottom and push it like a pushing together, like a contraction. Just letting them know.
So when I see this, I get chills, and I say, "Yeah, I know what he's trying to say. He's answering the question I had for the last 4 years. He's saying space is contracting in a gravitational field. My God, I'm really talking to Einstein. Nobody could have guessed that in
Right,
a
right.
million years. That was the one thing that got my attention. And yes, he says he's been working with me, and how do I say that, to people? And this sounds believable. It doesn't sound believable, but in reality, apparently that's what's really happening.
Hmm.
And so I'm becoming more and more aware of the fact that, I have an important role and mission to play here. And Einstein was with, of all people, Ray Bradbury. I mean, I don't know that guy from anywhere, but he and both of them were talking to me at the same time. Eventually, Tesla
Bradbury.
comes through. Tesla's trying to get me to invent all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know Tesla, but that was like, and he thanked me. Einstein thanked me, and he said he was very, um, well. He thanked me for naming my theory, the theory of super relativity. He says, "You honor my memory, and thank you for that."
Oh, that you haven't told me. That's wonderful.
So
That's
that was
wonderful.
heartwarming and happy. I mean, he's my hero. I've always studied
Yeah.
him and read about him, and it's a thrill to actually talk to him. And he knows apparently that I exist, and is
Yeah.
apparently helping me. And yeah, that goes on for everybody, though. That kind
Yes.
of help.
Yep.
You're getting help, and depending on what you're working on, if you're a philosopher, probably Socrates is talking
Yep.
to you, or Plato, or
Yeah.
um, so we mustn't think that that's super unusual, because I
Yep.
think they're capable of being everywhere at every place. I mean,
Yeah.
the psychic said, well, normally those kind of people don't come through for your average reading. I mean, Einstein doesn't keep popping in every time you
Right.
mention his name.
Right.
So there is a a unique, special thing going on there.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that now, and I welcome that. And I try to listen. I say prayers and invite uh, information, and keep an open mind about whatever I'm doing. And I remain skeptical about my work. I attack it as often as I can to see what arguments could be put up, so I make the theory stronger. You
Right.
should never just rest on your laurels. You need to always keep pushing forward until everything is complete. And so,
Yeah.
yes, I have had some communication with Albert Einstein. How about
I,
that?
yeah, that is tremendous, and that is wonderful, and that he was pleased and you're honoring his work. And Tesla too. I was on the show last night, and we were talking. I've talked about this many times. Our most recent president before Biden, his uncle was the one who commandeered those 40 or so boxes from the
Yes, I
Hotel
read
New
that.
Yorker. Yeah,
Right.
and then held on to them and said nothing to see here. So here you have his nephew with whom he was close. President seems to make interesting predictions, all this kind of stuff. I have to think that Tesla just he got thwarted on this plane, and then they continued to thwart him, right? Who was it? Was it JP Morgan who said, if I can't meter it, I can't use it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was thwarted there, and Edison kind of betrayed him, and then Dr. Trump from MIT, that was an ultimate betrayal. And then to go, we're confiscating all this under the Alien Act, and the dude was an American citizen.
Yeah.
Absurdness. So that's wonderful. Last question. Have you gotten any insight? I've been reading Ray Bradbury ferociously for the first time in my life, just as of late. So this is very interesting. Any idea why he tagged along?
No, I don't. I don't. I haven't read any of his books. I know very little about him actually. But everybody seems to know everybody on the other side.
Yeah, right on.
Uh, yeah.
Maybe
So,
he was maybe he was a fan of yours and wanted to meet you, so to speak. And
well,
then said, "Oh,
they're
you're gonna be talking to
probably
Mark."
were hanging out doing stuff. I'm sure
Yeah,
a lot of the scientists hang out and
I love
discuss
that.
things. And
Yeah,
I often wonder, well, what's an average day like over there? I mean, do they even have a day? I mean, there's no
yeah,
time. So,
yeah.
what does everybody do there all the time? Do they just watch us, or do they do? I don't know. Well, I've heard they watch us. That I've
Yeah.
heard that on many occasions where my father will watch one of my stepsons while he does his
Mhm.
job and watches his family. And I know uh, Einstein's been looking over my shoulder. Um, there's a lot of they have little boxes that they can look into and watch different people. And
Yeah,
your children did that before they were born. They were watching their parents as they were going through their lives. And so, yeah, there's a lot of that going on. It's a The bigger picture is really interesting
it is.
when you start to think about it. We think about, well, all our little world here, our house, getting in our car, driving to work, coming home, watching TV, like that's all there is. And that's like a minuscule amount of what's going on in the universe and in the greater superverse and the heavenly realm. There's so much more. We've only a small, minuscule fraction of what's out there. And it's when you raise that level of consciousness, you start to become aware of the bigger picture. And I've been going through that process ever since I retired. Since this
Yeah,
book has been going on, I'm seeing more and more of what's going on. I see things going on around me that are miraculous that I never noticed before. Help
right.
in particular. I'm getting help. I'm going to write it in. I'll put it in another book. There's some miracles that happen that I truly believe are direct help from the other side. And
Yeah,
certainly in my younger life, I've had those experiences. So it's a lot of it's an amazing world, amazing universe we live in.
it is. But I also want to point out that you're a man of deep faith, and that faith allowed you to take this on because you could have said, "No, no, no. I did my thing. I raised my family. I'm
Right.
retiring
Yeah.
now. I don't want to take this on." Or it's too dangerous, or there are people who don't want to see this happen, and we know that. So, folks, when we talk about have faith, Mark is living proof that when you have that faith, because my life is being guided right now. I mean, so much abundance is coming in, but you still have to say, yes, I'm going to show up. And just because I got the contract, I have to fulfill the contract.
Right. You
So
gotta
I,
you gotta
yeah,
work through it. You gotta
yeah,
play your hand of cards out.
yeah,
Definitely, you gotta live the experience. You can't experience things unless you go through those things. And so that's what life's all about: gathering experiences, good and
exactly.
bad, and bringing those things home to God. That's your gift to God.
That's
And
right.
the more good experiences you can gather, the better off you're going to be in the
Mhm.
afterlife, the happier you're going to be. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to do that. I'm really trying to focus on just being a better person and fulfilling this very important mission. So I've gotten more confidence and faith and just keep going. And he said, well, I didn't think I could do that, but now I've solved that problem. My goodness, that works. Now that experiment, it keeps going,
Yeah.
like giving me more reason to push forward. And look,
Mhm.
even if the worst thing that could possibly happen happens, and then I die or whatever because of something bad happening from the government or whatever, people don't really die. I mean, you
Right.
live on eternally forever. And
Yeah.
God has ways they can do strange things with time and dimension and could even undo things. We would never know it.
Yeah.
But I think in some cases, some people have been saved from uh, a terminal circumstance of some sort. Um, and God can do. I know I was spoken to by my guardian angel that saved my life.
November.
I
Yeah.
know there's many other people with stories like that out there. Many. I
Yeah.
hear them all the time. So
I
there,
know 3 or 4, and yeah, I had a massive tire failure and the GPS malfunctioned, and I was on a backcountry road going 40, where I should have been. The plan was to be on the highway going 70, and I
mhm.
would not be sitting here with you right now. Yeah, there's 2 things I want to leave you with. This is my
Yeah,
pin, Albert Einstein, which he stares at me every day with his tongue out for the radio people. And this is also over my desk, and I've been carrying this around for 20 something years. Oh, let me get rid of this here. This is, do you know who this is with Albert Einstein?
that looks like the comedian. What's his
Yeah,
name? It's
Charlie
Charlie
Chaplin.
Chaplin. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that is a beautiful art and science, a sense of humor and wonder and playfulness, the trickster. I've been carrying this around since I was 17 years old. I'm 55 now. So it's
Yeah,
holding up pretty
it's
good.
cool.
So I'm going to let you go before we inadvertently, through our enthusiasm, say something we shouldn't. I know you'll keep in touch. I
Yeah,
appreciate the trust and
I will.
all of that. And we are all praying for you and we are rooting for you, sir.
Thank you. I
Yeah,
need all
you're
the
welcome.
prayers I
So,
can get. Prayers
all
are
right.
very important. Thank you.
Yeah. So folks, keep them coming. Please like, subscribe, all that kind of stuff so that we have this record out there. I also keep copies of all the videos because Lord knows they might start just taking our stuff down. But if I have them, then I can find other places to share them. So
Hmm.
that's part of the process. So, sir, I hope you will be back with us again.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
I will have a big announcement, and then when I do that, I'm going on every show I can go on
Nice.
as quickly as I can. I'll put out a newsletter, and I'll send you the newsletter. We'll explain everything.
Awesome. All right. Happy holidays to you, sir. Blessed New
Same to
Year, and
you.
we'll stay in touch. Thank you so much. Guys, we'll see you next week on Into the Outer Realms. Peace. Be well. Be safe. Keep the faith.